Hi friends, in Planet Earth Dating, it's Sunday, March 7th, 2021. In both the Lynn life and the Jamie body mind, the authorized souls remain only child souls from the deeper, denser dimensions, and all other souls from all other dimensions, as long as the souls are already living by the many search for truth rules already given to the search for truth community by wiser minds above all of us. Those rules, of course, including doing what we're supposed to do, when we're supposed to do it, the way in which we're supposed to do it, as if we intend to excel. And in every moment there's something that each of us is supposed to be doing, and for the most part we're not doing it. None of us are doing it. We're doing many other things, and the fundamental choice in life is to do what we're supposed to do right now or anything else. And that's the fundamental choice, and wiser minds above who want us to live our soul plans, to keep our sacred vows to spirit, are trying to tell us what to do in every moment. And what makes it tricky is that there's a cacophony of other voices who are trying to get us to do other things. Voices from the astral dimensions, from those who are intervening between the denser dimensions and true divinity. So in these two host lives, we're part of exactly 1 million souls who have the job to hold open a portal to higher vibration presences, so that the higher vibration presences can figure out what's gone wrong here and keep this disaster from unfolding in the ugliest possible way. Because right now humanity is really intent on destroying all life on Earth. Like, if the assignment were to destroy all life on Earth, we think we'd be getting an A+, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Bullseye. But that isn't the assignment.
No.
The assignment is to create, we believe the assignment to humanity was to create bullying-free zones and to tend the planet to create places where bullying did not exist. And obviously that's not going very well.
No.
So today we have this assignment to film, and very specifically right here and right now, and probably we're about 5 minutes late.
Yeah, probably.
And the question of what to film is why we're running a little late. What is the topic of the interdimensional inquiry? What inquiry are we curious about? Can we develop curiosity about that higher presences also are curious about? And everybody seems to be interested in how to have human society come apart in anything but the ugliest possible way. It seems that so much damage has been done to the planet that it's unavoidable that human society is going to come apart.
Yeah, exactly.
And whether that be 5 years from now or 15 years from now is very hard to tell. But that seems to be the best guess of the range of time that most of us are looking at. 5 to 15 years before human society becomes really kind of untenable.
Yeah.
And so this morning the inquiry, and again please correct me if I'm wrong, but the inquiry seems to be circling around cruelty.
Yeah, exactly.
And there were some dream sequences that involved inquiries about cruelty, as if in much, much, much higher dimensions there are some scientists who are asking the wrong question and therefore heading in the wrong direction. And the question has to do, it seems to be they're framing the question as, how did all this cruelty arise? What happened to turn good people into such cruel, twisted monsters?
Exactly.
And rather than saying, how do we take the cruel, twisted monsters and turn them into good people, which we think is an inquiry that we ourselves would be interested in.
That's true.
So then there's this young man of our acquaintance who we've known maybe 30 years or so, and one thing we would say about this young man that we would have said since he was a little boy is that he did not have a speck of cruelty inside of him, that he was free of cruelty.
Yeah.
No cruelty inside him, not at all. And lately he seems to be actively, with his conscious awareness, trying to learn how to be cruel. Just in the last couple years, I would say. And he seems to have decided that society values cruelty and that it does not value niceness. And he grew up inside a Christian tradition, went to church,
right.
and he believed what they told him, and he tried to practice it, and he tried to be a kind person, actually following the teachings from the pulpit. And then he started to observe the world around him and realized, oh, everybody else is just faking it. They sit in church and they listen to the same words, but they're mean as sin. And that's how he would put it, we think, mean as
we
sin.
think so.
And he's decided that he wants to succeed. And therefore he's decided, we believe he's decided that therefore he has to learn how to be cruel.
Yeah, that's it.
And then we look upstairs and we think, what's going on with that guy who's so nice,
Kind,
gentle, without cruelty? Why has he decided to learn how to be cruel? And we look upstairs and we can find in other dimensions what looks like scientific, like pipettes and things,
I can see that.
reaching in, and they seem to be curious about what would turn good people into cruel monsters. And so it's like the godly presences were looking down and saying, well, find somebody who isn't cruel. Hey, that guy, he's not cruel. Okay, now what would it take to turn him into a cruel monster?
Yeah, that's the question.
And so this is a good example of how asking the wrong question can get us the wrong answers.
Exactly.
And so we're really careful with our inquiry today, because we know this inquiry has something to do with cruelty, and should we ask the wrong question, we could create a wrong answer for ourselves, and we don't want to do that.
No.
Or for anybody. We don't want to do that for anyone.
Exactly.
And so we would like to know how high we need to reach above cruelty. Either intentional or unintentional, because those scientists way, 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 way up high, they don't look like inherently bad people. It looks like they're just trying to answer a question that someone asked them.
That's what they're talking about.
They're just trying to provide an answer. Like, we know so many scientists. We have scientists coming out our ears.
That's right.
And they're often people who just like to find the answer to questions, and they don't often put a lot of thought into whether or not that's a good question to answer.
Exactly.
They're just so delighted to have funding so that they can conduct experiments. And sometimes they look back on their careers when their careers have ended and realize they've done horrible things.
That's what they're talking about
for bad
upstairs.
people.
Yeah.
But that they were just trying to solve problems. There's this one scientist we know who we like so much, and she has a bunch of patents to her name, and when she came to the end of that career, she was horrified at what she had done, really horrified. But she hadn't realized it at the time. She was just solving problems. People would come to her with their problems and ask her to solve the problem, and she would solve it. And that's how these presences upstairs feel, that they're just trying to solve this interesting problem of what would turn good people into cruel, twisted monsters. And we think that's a flawed inquiry. And so we would like to get above those presences who are asking questions that lead to cruelty. And we want to know how high we need to reach in order to do that. How high do we need to reach in order to get above presences who involve cruelty one way or another, in any way other than how to end cruelty in the kindest possible way? They're talking about hunting.
Yeah, they are.
And how that's a good example of really uncalled for cruelty. In almost all cases, that which is being hunted is not invasive, unless it's an invasive species, in which case we don't like the individual cruelty involved, but we see no other decent alternatives. Like, we hunt invasive plants and we pull them up, and we try to do it with kindness and love in our hearts, and it's really difficult.
Hard, yeah.
And we notice that we harden our hearts right at the moment that we're about to pull the weed, and to be able to pull the weed without hardening the heart is so difficult. It takes so much focus. We don't think we've got it.
No, I don't have that.
Mm-mm. How high do we need to reach to get above cruelty? Where does the search for truth focus need to be to reach above cruelty? And obviously we need to go past the scientists who are studying how to turn good people into cruel monsters, and need to go higher than those who are asking scientists to study how to turn good people into cruel monsters, because aren't those people in fact turning those scientists into cruel monsters?
So fascinating.
Right. Presumably inadvertently. Presumably all of it is just inadvertent. We hope. We hope.
It's like the vast bell curve of intention and awareness, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So much of it feels like inadvertent.
Inadvertent. Sloppy thinking, imprecise thinking, asking the wrong questions. That's what Awa would have said. He would have said, this is just a case of asking the wrong questions. And sometimes we would say, but why is that happening? And sometimes we would have an ungrateful edge to our voices.
I would, yeah, very much.
Which we see. And he would say, well, incompetence mostly. And we ourselves ask the wrong questions pretty much in an almost continual stream with very little interruption.
Exactly.
At least we're curious, though. Many people aren't curious. We're very curious and very busy. Like a terrier, like a Boston Terrier, curious and busy. But asking the right questions, there's the trick. How high does the search for truth focus need to be to get above cruelty? Either intentional or unintentional. That's opening.
That's opening. Someone is circling back around to something that was being channeled toward the start of the session when they talked about the fundamental choice in every moment being doing the one thing you're supposed to be doing right now, or anything else. And they're talking about an old family friend who was a man of many gifts and many resources and many talents, and how there was this one specific project in his life that was
maybe the purpose for his life.
Exactly, that's exactly the feeling. Maybe the whole purpose of the life. And how there was this question of what he is supposed to do with this possibility of this project, and he jumped right over that first question and then started flying through all the rest of the questions that could come after that question, having jumped over the first question.
Well, somebody saying what he did was say, well, here's what I already know how to do, and rather than heading for that which would be diametrically opposed to what he already knew how to do, which would therefore provide him the greatest learning, he just headed for what he knew how to do, and to him it felt like it already had enough challenges built in, and
I feel
that it was already quite a big enough challenge, and he didn't want to talk about what the assignment actually was. He wanted to pretend that he already knew what the assignment actually was. And they're talking about another client who was one of the few billionaires that we've worked with.
That's who they're talking
yeah,
about.
and we've worked with a surprising number of billionaires, and this guy was one of them, and he was a really good guy, and he was really at least trying to do what he thought the assignment was, but he had, just like the first gentleman, the family friend who had the assignment flipped in his head, this other billionaire had the assignment flipped in his head, and he just refused to let it go. He just refused to change, and bit in his teeth, refused. As do most people.
Exactly.
And how am I exactly like that? And to not be that way, and to, therefore, if the assignment is to try to find a portal that reaches higher than cruelty reaches, then to do that thing and not other things. And the family friend of the resources, he had a cruel streak.
That's what they're talking about.
We didn't often see it, because for the most part he was a very delightful person, and we actually maybe never saw it, but we heard tell of it.
Heard tell and felt real and true.
Oh yeah, that definitely happened. He did that thing, and that was cruel. But for the most part, it wasn't our experience of that gentleman who's now dead.
That's right.
One of our many dead friends. It's a beautiful gift to have so many dead friends, because we can see, we get to see what happens when the souls and the bodies diverge, and we can start to learn what aspects of the character came from the body that is now dead, and what aspects of the character came from the soul that is having an experience of sentience in another dimension. Or in some cases as an earthbound spirit, exactly in this dimension. Like there's some people who don't want to move on, and they just refuse, and they become earthbound spirits, and it never goes well for them, or for whatever it is they think they're trying to help. It's just getting worse and worse and worse. They need to go up and have their exit conference and declare the life complete. How high do we need to reach to get above cruelty? I think we wrap it somewhere. Send it up past all those scientists and all those who are asking. And it really doesn't feel too intentional. It just feels like asking the wrong questions.
Exactly.
It feels like incompetence mostly. Or just not wanting to it's not incompetence, it's just they're not wanting to frame it properly.
Yeah.
It's like those two gentlemen they were talking about.
Exactly.
Not wanting to frame it properly.